Animal Farm Part 2, Part 18. May 10th, 2022. Today, Erasmus and Crystal were traveling to the family farm. They needed to empty some possessions out of the home or they would be tossed. There wouldn't be much time for writing during the day. It ended up being a lot more than expected. It ended up being the fateful day that they were to take any valuables of Grandma because the old farmhouse was getting cleaned up for occupancy. Grandma never returned to sort through her possessions after being taken to a home. It had been years, and the mice and rats had their way with everything. The risk of the hantavirus was present, but they were not there to clean and stir the dust, merely find the hidden gems of a 60-year-old time capsule. Erasmus's intention was to help his mom in any way needed and to clear his own few furniture items out. His mom's intention was to clean out any of her mother's personal records. Crystal's intention was to ensure the history was preserved. She started with the old photos. Those were obvious to see the importance. The first item to catch her eye was a book. That's right, Crystal found God. There it was, an old yet well cared for copy of The Truth That Leads to Eternal Life. It was an old Jehovah's Witness hard copy book, copyrighted in 1968. These books were no longer in publication. Of course, Crystal used to have an extensive library of such books, typically highlighted with notes. This was not the copy of someone who had studied it thoroughly, of course. It was a seed that had been planted, just waiting for someone to find it. Then there were several old leather-bound Bibles. These thrilled Crystal to no end. There were so many Bibles. A typewriter was acquired, along with a couple of ottomans to match Grandma's chair. Crystal was now using it as her writing chair. She didn't actually sit in chairs. She perched like a bird, curled up with her knees outward, offering a shield and armrest. It seemed odd other people didn't sit this way. Made it a lot easier to move about in a moment. She likened sitting to a Bible story, where a soldier sat by a riverbank. Some of the men stuck their heads in the water to drink, and were unaware of what occurred around them. The smart soldier collected the water in his hand, and brought it to his mouth to drink, so he could be aware of his surroundings, in constant awareness. That constant awareness was being lost in people. So lost in their own thoughts, seldom are people aware of their surroundings. After a long day of moving furniture about, packing boxes, and filling garbage bags, a few more gems had been found that would really make the day hugely significant. A dresser containing the key to save the farm was found. It was not a literal key, but contained so many files and documents. This dresser, in its entirety, would provide what was needed for the farm to be registered as a heritage site and qualify for all the funding available to the special places and people that help build a community. Why was this farm so significant to the village of Lumbee? Frank had moved up from Langley in the 60s and bought a farm. His brother bought one too, and they traded work back and forth, getting everyone established. Frank also had a logging company and had many men working for him. He dreamed of creating a home in the country for people that couldn't afford to buy their own farms. He built the Trinity Mobile Home Park. An advertisement found had a picture of a young girl with pigtails, curled up in the long grass petting a baby sheep. It read, "We specialize in country living." There was an old colored photo attached at the bottom showing the farm and trailer park as an aerial view. There appeared to be approximately 65 trailer homes in view. There are now at least 80 homes in 2022. One of the residents is even a family member. These individuals are the people of Lumbee. Some have saved enough to purchase their own trailer. Some are just renting, seeking an affordable home. Small towns in BC were somewhat protected from some of the paroles, as not many paroles had their own transportation and therefore needed to live closer to the welfare offices. True story. They didn't have the means to live in the country if they couldn't get into town to fill out paperwork when required and pick up checks. As anyone on the system knew, though not required monthly to be at the office in person, something came up typically that would require standing in line for the dole. This trailer park was, and is, an opportunity for lower-income families to live in an outdoor, farm-like setting, nestled into the foot of the once forested, now clear-cut, pillaged mountainside. These individuals would benefit greatly from having the village of Lumbee purchase the farm and use it to preserve the history of the family and offer gardening space to residents and a creek to play in come summertime. This was Crystal's dream for the farm. There was a book which came to Crystal as nothing more than mere chance. This book was the book of life. This book gave her all the power she ever needed for all her time and would need to be entrusted to someone upon her passing. If there ever was such thing as a witch, this made Crystal one, without any proper training or knowledge. She held all the tools required now to do what needed to be done. The day before, the Indigenous Manifesto had come to her, along with a clay drum stretched with rawhide. The day before that, she had learned how to bend a spoon with her mind, simply by explaining it to her daughter. When one explains something in simple terms to another, they sometimes reach realizations never before known, while already having carried the information in pieces without ever having seen the big picture. Would you like to know how to bend a spoon with your mind? It turned out Crystal's children had never seen The Matrix and had no idea what she meant about a spoon, because she'd been holding a phone charging cord the whole time she spoke. It started when the youngest approached Crystal while she was charging in the sun. If you catch a crystal while it is fully charged, you get the best radiation. Well, her daughter was upset because her phone charger had been pulled apart and would not work. She was devastated, holding the exposed wires with small soldered connection points. Although reassured there were other cords, this had been her first cord for her first cell phone. She assigned a lot of personal value to her possessions, which was nice to see the appreciation of financial value. There is a point where objects should not hold such sway over a person's emotions. Crystal then explained how to bend a spoon with one's mind. This cord, held out in hand, was not a saddening broken cord. It was an exciting piece of scientific discovery that could now be taken apart to see how it operates. Her daughter's mood lightened at the thought of getting to pull it apart, as she still enjoyed being a scientist in her free time. Usually she was doing chemistry experiments as a slime movement swept through the young people. It was in explaining this, though, that Crystal Dawn herself realized the power of her words. She too had an experience that day, the feeling of being filled with hope, just to discover it was a misread name. She had spent the great majority of that date in a state of hopefulness before realizing her personal blunder. Why did she need someone else to fill her with hope? She didn't. She had enough hope herself that she could quite easily bend that spoon to her will. There were enough negative naysayers in the world, and that path was not an option. It was the hopeless option of doom. These books offered insight, though, that Crystal Dawn needed to tie everything together to make logical sense to people. Erasmus was always telling her she needed to be more clear. Last night, their study of the chakras made Crystal realize she had no personal interest whatsoever anymore in that color palette of the individual. She knew those colors. It was a lovely rainbow, and she felt it through and through. The unknown to be explored was what was beyond the rainbow. There's a lot more to rainbows than you may be aware of. When light is refracted, it makes more than one rainbow. There are other rainbows all around, seldom seen, as more than a flicker of light in the blinding sun. Erasmus had once joined Crystal in the sun. She silenced him and asked him to join her in her headspace. He closed his eyes, and they rested their heads together. The sun was not as brilliant as it had once been. Clouds rolled across the sky as evening approached and the sun bid adieu. She played a song, and they sat listening, eyes closed. Sunshine on my shoulders makes me happy. Sunshine in my eyes can make me cry. Sunshine on the water look so lovely. Sunshine almost always makes me high. If I had a day that I could give you, I'd give to you a day just like today. If I had a song that I could sing for you, I'd sing a song to make you feel this way. Sunshine on my shoulders, John Denver. Crystal Dawn loved Erasmus to the fullest extent of her being. She knew she'd found her twin flame. He didn't believe in it, though. It was not her, but there is the idea that there are souls in this world that complete each other, and we're meant to find each other throughout time. The most fortunate enough to have ever gained the loving favor of another... if you are fortunate enough to have ever gained the loving favor of another, you are aware you can love many throughout your lifetime. These past loves do not lessen the love of the present. Relationships help people grow. People need people to grow. This is a fact. A child raised without contact with other people was how mankind was before they evolved with communication. A hermit living in the woods has similar experiences day in and day out. These are experiences of survival. Getting food, cooking food, eating food, getting firewood, maintaining a fire for the food and heat. There's also the keeping of a shelter for safety and storage. After that, there's merely fending off predators and maintaining hygiene. Was this truly the desired height of humanity now in 2022? This is to get away from the world, i.e. each other, and live a life of solitude because your relationship won't last, parents are too demanding, and children won't listen or even talk anymore? Erasmus had a dream to head in that direction, out on land where he could build whatever he wanted and collect building materials without anyone's complaint of useless hoarding. Crystal, too, wanted to be on land, so they were a perfect fit, both willing to do the work of the pioneers to create a homestead and sustain themselves with their own efforts. Have you ever thought you really wanted something, desired it, worked for it, attained it, just to realize you don't really want it? This was Crystal's greatest fear for how she spent her time. After all, time is the currency of your life. What if you spent it poorly? The present consciousness only has 80 to 100 years of time, if we're lucky, to experience all that life has to offer. Each experience helps an individual to grow to a higher state of enlightenment and connectedness. Crystal feared if she got her dream of living in the woods, she would not find peace, because the rest of the world would still be in pain. How could one possibly skip through the forest with a free, light heart, at one with the universe, knowing full well how much pain the universe was in? Ignoring the pain of those around you crying out for help are not the means to have an enlightened soul. If your physical partner by your side carried the pains of the world, you would do whatever was in your power to help them. The whole world was crying out, and Sri Krishna promised his return when the world needed him. A human's lifespan is only so long, and each day is a gift. What if these long days blended into months that sped by into forgotten years that felt like an overall waste in the end upon review? There were countless stories of irritable people, angry with the world for how their life went. A most inspirational song was written that helped people see past their own misery and stand up for themselves. Oh, fun. Okay. Yeah, I get it, you're an outcast, always under attack, always coming in last, bringing up the past. No one owes you anything, I think. You need a shotgun blast, a kick in the ass, so paranoid. Watch your back. Oh my, here we go. Another loose cannon gone bipolar. Slipped down, couldn't get much lower. Quicksand's got no sense of humor. I'm still laughing like hell. You think that by crying to me, looking so sorry, then I'm gonna believe you've been infected by a social disease? Well, then take your medicine. I created the sound of madness, wrote the book on pain. Somehow I'm still here to explain that the darkest hour never comes in the night. You can sleep with a gun, but when you gonna wake up and fight for yourself? Shinedown, Sound of Madness. That was the problem with society in 2022. Despite being a partially free yet divided world, people weren't actually allowed to speak up for themselves anymore. The truckers' protest in Canada was a perfect example. The extreme violence used against anti-mandate peaceful demonstrators in New Zealand was an even more extreme example. Better yet, the world gathered in Beijing, China, and public politicians warned athletes not to speak up and get involved in Chinese affairs. Abuses committed included mass arbitrary detention, torture, enforced disappearances, mass surveillance, cultural and religious persecution, separation of families, forced returns to China, forced labor, and sexual violence and violations of reproductive rights. Little news trickled out of Zhejiang in 2021. However, as the authorities maintained tight control over information and as access to the region, already limited, was further constrained due to COVID-19 movement restrictions. New research from aid data revealed US $385 billion in hidden debt owed by developing countries to Chinese authorities. Authorities banned the annual Victoria Park Vigil commemorating victims of the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre in Beijing. On the day of the vigil, police arrested the vice chair of the organizing group, Hong Kong Alliance, cordoned off the park, and stationed officers throughout the city to prevent remembrances. In September, police froze the Alliance's $2.2 million in assets, closed its June 4th museum about the massacre, revoked its registration, deleted its social media accounts, and arrested its 4 leaders for inciting subversion. Police censored the internet through website blocking for the first time. Human Rights Watch 2022 World Report.